In the quiet, historic streets of Fall River, Massachusetts, a chilling nightmare unfolded. Three young women, each with dreams and lives ahead of them, met their end in ways that would haunt the city forever. Their murders weren't just shocking, they were the spark that ignited a nationwide frenzy known as the Satanic Panic. Imagine a time when whispers of devil worship sent shivers down the spine of every parent, where the fear was palpable that the nation's youth could be the next to fall prey to this sinister, seemingly widespread cult. Join us as we explore the dark corners of this tragedy, where fear met folklore, and where the truth might be more terrifying than any tale of the devil. On a brisk, early October morning in 1979, the serene calm of Fall River, Massachusetts, was shattered when two joggers stumbled upon a scene of horror beneath the bleachers of Regional Vocational Technical High School. There, they found the brutally murdered body of Doreen Levesque, a 17-year-old runaway and prostitute. Her body was bound, her skull crushed by a rock, stabbed, assaulted, and left in a pool of her own blood. Nearby, her clothes lay scattered alongside a rock, stained with her hair and a tooth, chilling remnants of her last moments. Police estimated her death was around 2 a.m. and pondered if she had walked to her dorm or was carried there after her life was snuffed out. A month later, 43-year-old Andy Malte entered the police station to report the disappearance of 19-year-old Barbara Raposa. Like Doreen Levesque, Raposa was a young mother who worked the streets of Bedford before suddenly vanishing. Malte, in his subsequent visits, brought not just concern, but a warning. Satanism was taking root in Fall River. The following month, Malte introduced police to 17-year-old Robin Murphy and 20-year-old Karen Marsden, both prostitutes and partners who echoed his terrifying claim. They pointed fingers at Carl Drew, a 26-year-old local pimp, not just as a killer, but as the leader of a satanic cult. They alleged Drew murdered Levesque for refusing his control. But with only the words of these troubled souls to go by, law enforcement felt handcuffed. The nightmare deepened on January 26, 1980, when hunters unearthed Raposa's body, similarly bound and brutalized in a wooden area behind a printing shop. The pattern was unmistakable, the horror escalating. Then, just as Marsden had begun to help unravel these mysteries, she vanished. Her last words to the police officer were threats from Drew, who promised her a gruesome death by battery acid, her soul offered to the devil for her betrayal. Carol Fletcher confirmed these fears, stating, "In the right time and in the right place, he, Carl Drew, was going to kill Karen." It wasn't until April 18, 1980, that Marsden's fate was discovered. Her skull found in a wooden area of Westport, Massachusetts, displaying the same brutal, blunt force trauma that marked Levesque and Raposa's deaths. The community was now not just gripped by fear, but by an overwhelming question. How deep did the darkness go in Fall River? By now, the police in Fall River were forced to entertain a chilling reality. They might have a serial killer on their hands, one who preyed on the vulnerable, those living on the edge, too scared to seek help until their lives were on the line. But what was even more unsettling was the whisper of something darker, the possibility that the stories of a cult of devil worshippers were not just an urban legend, but a grim truth. Several sex workers, living in the shadows of society, came forward, trembling with fear, to tell the tales of rituals in the eerie silence of the Freetown State Forest and the concrete jungles of Fall River's housing projects. Each woman who spoke painted a picture of terror, insisting they lived in constant dread, fearing they'd be the next to be sacrificed like Levesque, Raposa, and Marsden. According to these witnesses, the three murdered women weren't just victims, they were weaklings in this satanic cult, killed to keep its secrets buried. Unfortunately, skepticism was rife among the police force. Captain Ronald Andrade voiced the doubt that plagued the investigation. "A lot of these people we talked to are heavy drug users. We're wondering whether this cult exists in their minds or if it's a real thing." The credibility of these reports was in question. Were they genuine cries for help, or drug-induced fantasies meant to mislead the investigation? Yet, the undeniable evidence began to mount. Crucifixes, altars, mutilated animals, dolls, and pentagrams found scattered around the city like dark omens. The police could no longer dismiss the possibility. The reality of a satanic cult in Fall River was becoming as undeniable as the murders themselves. With this grim realization, the urgency for action escalated to a critical point. it was time to delve into the darkness to confront the evil that had taken root in their community. As months passed, the police in Fall River pieced together a mosaic of suspects in this chilling case. One of the first was Andy Malte, the man who had reported Barbara Raposa missing, the father of her child. Malte denied any connection to the cult, but spoke of haunting dreams and visions of Raposa's murder. In these visions, he claimed to be led by two mysterious angels to her body, witnessing her brutal end from above, where he saw a tall, long-haired man bludgeon Raposa to death. The bizarre testimony led to his arrest for knowledge too specific to be mere coincidence. Meanwhile, Robin Murphy, lover of the murdered Karen Marsden, came forward with her own dark confessions. She claimed to have been present at all three killings, alleging that Marsden and Levesque's death were part of a satanic ritual led by Carl Drew, their pimp. But Raposa's case was different. Murphy accused Malte of jealousy-fueled murder, describing how he beat Raposa to death after a heated argument in his car. Despite the similarities, she insisted Raposa's death was unrelated to the cult's activities. In a deal for leniency, Murphy pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, securing a life sentence without parole. During Maltese's trial, she painted a grim picture, recounting how on that fateful November night, Malte, driven by rage, had violently attacked Raposa after a fight between her and Murphy. She described the moment when Malte pulled Raposa from the car, assaulted her, and then delivered the fatal blow with a rock, all witnessed by Murphy from the car. To cement her accusations, Murphy revealed years of abuse at Malte's hands, starting when she was just 11, alongside his provision of drugs. Malte, however, maintained his innocence, claimed to have been with his mother during the time of the murder. This alibi, though corroborated by his mother, could not sway the jury. On January 30th, 1981, Malte was convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment, his claims of innocence echoing through the courtroom, leaving a community grappling with the reality of violence, betrayal, and the dark shadows of a supposed cult. Next in the spotlight was Carl Drew, the dark figure rumored to be the leader of the Fall River cult, casting a long shadow over the town. Robin Murphy, once again, took the stand, her testimony painting a gruesome picture. She accused Drew of murdering Doreen Levesque for her defiance. According to Murphy, Drew had lured Levesque into his car under the pretense of protection, only to drive her to her doom at DeMond Regional Vocational Technical High School. There, he dragged her to the bleachers and ended her life in what should have been a brutal spectacle, yet, astonishingly, Murphy claimed Drew returned to the car clean, as if Levesque had been silenced in silence. The horror didn't end there. Murphy recounted the murder of her lover, Karen Marsden. On a cold February night in 1980, Drew, Marsden, and Murphy drove to Westport. There, in the isolation of the woods, Drew violently pulled Marsden from the car, demanding her diamond ring. When she refused, he severed her finger to claim it. Murphy then described how Drew commanded her to slit Marsden's throat, both of them taking turns to beat her with rocks. In chilling detail, Murphy shared how Drew marked her with Marsden's blood, taunting, "God can't help you now," before speaking in tongues, suggesting an unholy ritual. The court was left reeling from these revelations, but Murphy went further, claiming both murders were sacrifices to Satan, and that during these acts she experienced out-of-body sensations, suggesting she was possessed, not in control, as if an evil spirit, summoned by Drew, had taken over her body. To corroborate these dark tales, Carol Fletcher was brought to testify, her immunity secured for her cooperation. While her story aligned with Murphy's in many ways, especially regarding Marsden's murder, the details differed enough to raise questions. In a letter to a friend, Murphy accused Fletcher of embellishing the truth. "She's saying everything. She's trying to get Carl and me life in prison." Yet, more voices echoed in the courtroom. Leah Johnson, for instance, described Drew as a nice guy, but confessed to his brutality in Marsden's murder, explaining that Drew wanted her to feel pain. The trial was not just about proving guilt, but about confronting the very essence of evil, the manipulation of souls, and the terrifying possibility that the devil's work was being done in their midst. In the end, Carl Drew was convicted for the murder of Karen Marsden, sentenced to spend his life behind bars without the possibility of parole. Yet, he has always maintained his innocence, pointing the finger back at Robin Murphy, claiming she was in fact the real killer. "Robin Murphy is, and will always be, a danger to society," Drew declared, painting her as the architect of his downfall. Years later, the narrative twisted further when Murphy herself recanted her damning testimony against Drew, denying her presence at the Marsden murder. She confessed to fabricating the story under prosecutorial pressure, leading to her parole in 2004. But freedom was fleeting. In 2011, she was caught with heroin, violating her parole, and was returned to prison. When she stood before the parole board in 2012, her plea for freedom was denied. The board chair, Paul Tressler, was blunt. "Quite frankly, we can't grant you parole if you don't tell us the truth. You are almost 4 decades into lie after lie after lie." Carol Fletcher, too, recanted her testimony against Drew in 2004, admitting she had been coerced into spinning a false narrative. She claimed the Marsden murder occurred on the roof of the former terrace apartments, with Murphy as the killer. The truth seems forever lost in a labyrinth of lies. 3 women were brutally murdered in Fall River, and there's no doubt a cult was operating within this town. What I've kept until now is the revelation from Detective Paul Carey of the Fall River Major Crimes Division. Carey infiltrated this cult, witnessing a satanic ritual firsthand, where both Drew and Murphy were present. The air was thick with chanting in an unknown tongue, culminating in a chilling "Hail Satan" proclamation, as if the devil himself had graced their gathering. Carey, based on what he saw, believes Drew to be innocent, and Murphy the true orchestrator of the murders. So, who bears the guilt for all of these heinous acts? We might never know for sure. In Fall River, the truth is as elusive as the shadows cast by the moon on a night wrapped in the whispers of the damned.
If you liked that video, please consider leaving a like and a thumbs up, and if you have any suggestions for future videos or ways that we can improve, please leave them in the comments below. With that, thank you for listening, and I hope to see you in the next video.